Medical professionals have read it. What's the worst sex related injury you've seen at your workplace? Exotic. Special ordered venomous spider up the ass. Guy called an ambulance because he wasn't sure if he could put bug bite cream up there too, as the packaging said for external use only. Lost entire transverse section of necrotic bowel. Lived, but poops in a bag now. If only the spider had come with the same warning. Mini lava lamp stuck in the rectum. Power cord was sticking out like a tail. Mini lava lamp stuck in the rectum sounds like a Cards Against Humanity card. Broken penis. Dude's testicles were the size of GRP fruits. I assumed the internal pudendal artery was pumping blood into them from somewhere. Was an MA then. Now in med school. Was a neat injury. But nothing we could do for him in urgent care. He needed surgery for sure. Did see a bottle stuck in a rectum x-ray as well. I'm not one to judge. Keep on freaking on. But don't put glass in your ass please. Countless cases of stuff stuck up the butt. Dildos. Vibrators. Cucumbers. Toilet bowl brushes. If it's possible to get in the butt, someone has needed it surgically removed. Toilet bowl brush was the most shocking. However, the funniest was reconstructing a giant white, oddly realistic veiny cock on the back table to make sure they had pulled it all out. Edit. Pro tip. If you get something stuck up your butt, don't make up some fantastic story about naked light bulb changes. We know how it got there. You know how it got there. There's no shame in liking butt stuff. Just tell us your personal time went awry. I used to work weekend night shifts. Had a younger girl come in one weekend. Despite her age, she had a hip replacement and it was dislocated. ER put it back in and away she went. Next weekend, she's back again. Same thing. Third weekend in a row and there she is. Finally I ask what she's doing to dislocate her hip and she says her boyfriend keeps bending her leg back to far during sex. I told her to try different positions. Dude stuck a pencil up his urethra. Wood is porous. It got stuck. For a day. He couldn't pee around it. And initially that's what his complaint was. Urinary retention. Finally in the exam room when the doc asked him WTF with the eraser sticking out of his dick, did the guy fess up? He ended up needing surgery. He was also 70ish. Old enough to know better. Writer's block. Uncle-in-law, anesthesiologist, had a patient come in that had poured concrete in his own ass. While trying to make a custom DLDO, they had to chisel the concrete out of his rectum. Back in medical school I was on a surgery rotation with a classmate. Our first day we got split into groups. By chance. My first case was an appendectomy. By chance. His first case was helping deliver a jewel encrusted DLDO from the rectum of a 250-pound guy. He was at the business end when it crowned and was responsible for catching as the surgeons pushed from above. Worked at a physical therapy clinic for years. 78-year-old man herniated a disc in his neck eating out his girlfriend. He was a long-time patient and friend of the therapist. So we got the whole story. Our patient, P, was old, rich, and single, and loved all the sleazy bits that came with it. One day his 39-year-old girlfriend asked him to return a favor. So P goes down on a woman for the first time ever at age 78. Not really knowing what he was doing. He went at her like a dog drinking water, his words. A few moments later he felt a pop and his arm went numb. He came to us with a nearly useless left arm about 2 days later. My boss was laughing so hard during the eval that I went in the treatment room to check on him. He insisted I stay and hear the whole story. He died a couple months later from something unrelated. I miss that crusty old bastard a lot. Janitor heated petroleum jelly and injected it into his dick with a syringe. He was trying to make his dick bigger. He added more. Other janitors saw him and decided to do the same. So turns out with nowhere to go, petroleum jelly forms granulomas under the skin, which get infected. Word was the tip of his dick and the base wouldn't get hard anymore. Only the middle. And abscesses formed, resulting in what was described as the dick looking like maggots had bored tunnels through it. Janitor 1 was hospitalized for several weeks. As for Janitor 2, he ended up with several ulcerating wounds in his pelvic region. You could stick a finger in them. They were that big. Apparently injecting your dick with petroleum jelly is fairly common. Some girls have also attempted to inject their boobs so give themselves implants. It has led to deaths because bits and pieces of it can dislodge and travel to the lungs. Don't do it. Janitor heated petroleum jelly and injected it into his dick with a syringe. That's a no from me, dog. Typical, not a medical professional. But I had a friend who was a hospital pharmacist. He said a patient came in with a coffee thermos in his ass. Cap first. He got the rest of the thermos out but the cap stayed. After a couple days he finally decided to go to the hospital because he couldn't get it out. The cap ended up festering bacteria and he had part of his colon removed. Now that guy is in his 30s with a colostomy bag. I've seen a crystal clear imprint of a clothing iron to the ass. The thought process was something like, if candle wax equals kinky, ironing your ass equals mega kinky. I don't know. Also a pair of junkies got high and shot heroin in the guy's dick and we had to fillet the whole thing. He was distraught about the size difference. If candle wax equals kinky, ironing your ass equals mega kinky. Using a feather is kinky. Using the whole bird is just perverted. Edit. Holy crap. Thanks for the gold. You popped my cherry. I'm no longer a virgin. Edit. Twice? Thank you. I had a patient come into the ER with runs of VTACH, dangerous arrhythmia, because his boyfriend sprinkled methamphetamine powder on a DLDO and stuck it in his ass. Kinda SX related. On Andrew's AFB in the 80s a guy was caught molesting his daughter by his wife. As the cops arrived he sat on his front concrete steps and hammered his junk off. My mom worked on him in the emergency room. He still ended up in jail. 18-year-old kid had a cheap DLDO break way up his ass. Was bleeding from his butt. Needed surgery. In my state you're not legally an adult until 19 so he had to call his mom for consent. And she demanded staying with him through his entire ER visit. Edit. His butt ate the entire DLDO. Probably a solid 7-9 inches of plastic. Top 2 inches is what broke off. Also yes. The medical consent rules are screwy. Applies for sexual assault as well. Unless the parent was a suspected assailant. Till there are 3 states in the union that have an age of majority higher than 18. Not my story but my mom's. She used to work in the oncology department of a hospital a while back. One day she comes home, sits me down, and says, "Syphilis in the eye. You always make sure your partner is clean. Don't take their word for it. I don't care what you do. Just syphilis in the eye." That's all I needed to hear. Edit. Thanks for the silver kind stranger. I tried to explain to my mom someone liked her advice that much but she didn't really get it. Labial hematoma. Couple had SI times. Then got into a fight. He kicked her in the crotch. This burst a blood vessel in the labia, which made it swell to the size of a large pear. That hurts. She used many colorful words to describe what she thought of him. My friend works at an ER in a small rural area in Canada. Apparently this young guy comes in and has a can of Axe body spray stuck in his rectum. He was extremely embarrassed and his excuse was that he accidentally sat on it. A guy came into the emergency department because his ass hurt after his boyfriend was fisting him. It had torn his bowel. He had to get a colostomy. It wasn't like life-ending or anything. But imagine going to the ED after sex and getting told you're getting a colostomy. I had a woman in her 50s that had been fisted by her boyfriend while they had recreationally taking Lotab and Somas. She apparently was really into it and was asking him to do it harder. Then he pulled his arm out and noticed blood everywhere. He called for an ambulance and she had a significant bowel tear. She had surgery and a colostomy. And several complications post-op and ended up on a ventilator long-term, unable to wean. Her grown children didn't know what caused it. The boyfriend was very attentive and stayed by her side. He was very nice and I know he had to be dealing with some guilt. Eventually, her prognosis was so poor they withdrew life support and she died. Every time I had any conversations with the boyfriend, I noticed how huge his fists and forearms were. Nothing worse than dildos, vibrators and other objects stuck where the sun don't shine. One chap did say that he likes sticking things up his ass. And that's fair enough. But the strange excuses are usually the most entertaining part of it. Worst genital injury was a guy who drilled his scrotum with a cordless drill doing DIY. Don't secure your workpiece between your knees if you want to be sure to keep both testicles. Gentlemen. Paragraph 1. I'm okay. Paragraph 2. Infected penile implant. His dong looked like a purple tall boy beer can. They had to take him to the OR. Literally fillet his man parts. Take out the implant. And wash it all out. Worst part, they left it open for several days. My mother worked in an ER and told me a story about a guy who was high on angel dust and couldn't get it up. His friend told him to stick a chicken bone in his dick and he'd be able to have sex. No. Out of everything in here, this one is probably the most disgusting to me so far. Imagine being a chicken and dying for this. I'm a paramedic. We recently had a gentleman shoot himself in the head of his penis with a handgun. Edit. I realize it's not really a SZUL injury per se. And the OP probably wanted more I fell on this and it got stuck in my ass type injuries. But this felt relevant lol. A coworker was getting divorced. One night his soon-to-be ex called about something and she could tell he was having a bad day. So to cheer him up she told him all about how while she and her new boyfriend were having sex he shoved a dildo up her ass and it just got sucked up. After failed attempts to remove it they went to the ER where she got surgery to remove it. After surgery doctors sanitized the dildo and returned it to her. This story did not make him feel better. If she said they shoved a dildo up her new boyfriend's ass, that may have cheered him up. Does it count if I saw it prior to the doctor? Did some AV work for a friend of mine that managed a swing club. He was having sex with some girl on this sort of rolling gunny bed out in the middle of the lounge area with like 50 plus people enjoying the show. They accidentally slid off the bed and in the jumble and ensuing thump on the ground, an audible pop was heard. He fractured his penis. That pop. Shudder. Poor guy's junk almost immediately looked like a deflated purple balloon. This was many years ago now and you can rest assured that I never let old broke dick forget. That is what best friends offer, right? Dentist here. In dental school definitely saw a girl with an inflamed palate that she was worried about an infection. Did some tests. Nothing looked infectious. Faculty member pulled us aside and was like, yeah, that's a bruise from deep throating. Might not be a major injury, but definitely memorable. Edit. And now my top rated comment is about overly rough blowjobs. To respond to a few comments. We actually saw this in oral pathology class. It can happen because of continuous trauma to the palate. Just like you could get a bruise on your arm with continuous hits even if they aren't too hard. It recommends swishing with a salt water rinse a couple times a day for a few days to help with swelling. And maybe take a break until it heals. Dissected vertebral artery from oral sex. Essentially a big brain hemorrhage. Did not end well. Either. My mom is a secretary at a hospital. So she has heard a few stories. Apparently a person had come in with a carrot stuck up their ass. Saying that it got stuck because they fell on it while they were cooking naked. I'd like to take a moment to thank everyone in this thread for making sure my genitalia never work again. My stepdad is an ER doctor in the only hospital in the city I was raised in. There was no place else to go when the SX swing my idiot boyfriend hung on drywall ceiling came crashing down and I broke my tailbone. He was also there 6 months later when that same boyfriend let go of my hips as he was going at me pretty hard from behind, sending my over the edge of the bed and head first into a desk. We get inmates at my hospital because we're right down the road. They like to inflict injuries upon themselves to get out and spend a day here. The best from the inmates was a guy stuck a razor blade up his urethra, then proceeded to shove it up farther with a pen. The pen put a hole in his urethra and of course the razor shredded. Nurse here. Guy came in with a condom sheathed cucumber up his ass. Was fully comfortable admitting that he and his partner were messing around in the bedroom and just went a bit too far. Wasn't embarrassed at all. Also, I've seen a guy on the wards with one of those plastic balls you get in a ball pit stuck up there. So I have a patient who came in due to a rash on his penis. When asking what may have caused the rash, he states, "I had really rough sex. Like really rough." I just nod my head and inform the doctor. We just give each a look of WTF and she proceeded to go speak with the patient. The patient told her the true reason why he has a rash, and it was because he dry humped this girl so roughly that he basically gave himself carpet burn on his penis from his pants. Oof. We had a poor girl come into the ER a few weeks ago. Simple sex went wrong case and she was basically bleeding out from her vagina. They think she had some weak arteries down there and one or more just ruptured. Full disclosure. This happened to me. I noticed a small amount of bleeding immediately after. Later I noticed more. About the amount of menstruation. I laid a towel down and decided to go to bed. I felt a rush of fluid and made it to the bathroom before feeling faint and hit the floor. I was able to call an ambulance from the floor. In the ambulance they said my face, lips were blue from loss of blood. One quick emergency surgery later I was all stitched up and on my way home. Apparently I also have weak arteries. What started as a small tear broke open. Had a couple come into the ED via ambulance. Her in white terry cloth bathrobe just soaked in blood down the front. And him wrapped in a shower curtain, clutching his junk. Turns out that showers are slippery. She hit the soap dish with her chin while attempting fellatio. Lots and lots of tiny stitches resulted. This 26-year-old decided to be circumcised. His doctor told him not to have sex. He didn't listen. It peeled like a banana. Okay, time to end the internet forever. I'm a firefighter paramedic. Broken penis. Bent at a right angle about halfway. It's the second time he had it. His wife was on top and got carried away. It looked like they sacrificed a chicken on the bed. Not my call. But a paramedic was called to a 20-something male living in a ski resort town having groin pains. Arrived to find his penis completely necrotic. His buddies had bet him that he couldn't stick it in a snowman for an hour. Perfect example of winning the battle but losing the war. Not a doctor, but my friend had a girl go down on him while they were cooking. She apparently had been handling some hot peppers before she decided to pin him to the wall. They didn't go to the hospital but he swears he was super close to going. Mood was ruined after that. From a security guard that worked on the ER night shift. The difference between Barbie and G.I. Joe dolls is that Barbie arms don't articulate well. And can make a big T. Someone learned that the hard way. Had a guy stick a whole chorizo sausage in his rectum. When the EMTs called in with a chief complaint. Before I hung up I told them to bring some eggs. The ER doctor attempted removal but wasn't able to grab a hold of the end. The patient ended up being transferred and needed surgery for sausage removal. Wife found out hubby was cheating and slashed at his groin with a knife. Scrotum torn open, degloving one of his testes. Degloving is a terrible word for a terrible thing and I never want to think about it ever again. I bet there are some good excuses too. I was cooking naked and dropped a package of POTUS and it broke open and I slipped on one and landed just wrong and one went up my rectum. Yeah. I took care of a guy who penetrated his own ass hard enough with a DLDO that he perforated his rectum, which required a surgery to repair. I didn't take care of him the second time but he was admitted again months later for a similar issue. That's a lesson you should try to learn the first time. A young woman came in complaining of pink eye. Looked just like pink-eyed. So we cultured the discharge coming from her eye. Turns out it was chlamydia of the eye. The best was informing the doctor of the results. And the puzzling look on the doctor's face as she wondered how the PT was able to get chlamydia in her eye. Then later the look of disgust on her face as she realized how it happened. While interning at a hospital, I heard on the rumor mill that a hotshot young DR had a thing with a nurse. They end up in a supply closet with some lidocaine-like numbing shots. Apparently he really wanted an L. She was scared to try it and wanted it to be numb. She had to go downstairs and face her co-workers while she's on the clock, because while numb, she didn't feel him tearing up her insides. She needed stitches. Woman came in saying a friend put a cat toy in my vagina 2 years ago and I think it is still there. It was still there. CT scan show a dumbbell-shaped toy with a bell on one end. Unfortunately the other end was some sort of mesh and her body had grown into it. Everything in her pelvis was infected. She ended up losing some vagina, colon and bladder. 2 years. 2 whole years. How? Had a dude put a plastic tube in his pecker for a permanent hard-on. And no. He couldn't be normal and put it down the urethra. Bastard went surgical and inserted IT. Worked for 1 months before he came in to see us. The other was a guy with a shot glass up his ass. It broke. Girl was in agony with the worst case of herpes I've ever seen. Her partner had a cold sore on his lip and ate her out. Oh. That poor girl. We tend to be so damn flippant about cold sores that we forget they're herpes. My wife is an EM physician. Not sure if she considers this the worst. But it's the worst she's shared with me. While she was in residency, a guy in his early 20s came in with a padlock locked around the base of his genitals. Turned out he had been caught cheating. So as a sign of his guilt repentance, he locked himself up and sent the key to his ex, asking for forgiveness. After 3+ days and no word from the ex, he came into the ED. But by that time everything was black and necrotic from lack of blood flow. Only action was complete amputation, penis and scrotum. My wife was in the room when urology gave him the news. And once reality set in he just lost it. They had to sedate him. But he hadn't consented to the surgery yet. So psych got involved when he started talking about suicide. I'm late to the party but this is a good one. A couple comes into the emergency department. The woman has been stabbed in the head repeatedly with a fork. The man's penis has been cut off. Completely. Turns out the woman had a full tonic-clonic seizure while giving him oral sex. She clamped down and he freaked out. Honestly, who could blame him? And grabbed the nearest thing he could find to try to get her off of him. He found a fork. In his panic, I guess stabbing her in the head with a fork seemed like his best option. Honestly, as crazy as that sounds, I'm not about to judge a man who's getting his member bitten off. So if your partner has any history of epilepsy, oral is off the table, kids. Not a medical professional, but on a one-night stand a girl sat on top of me and thought my Prince Albert was a piece of garbage or something and in an instant yanked on it, causing my ween to tear at the tip. Still finished. Well, I once had a patient in the neuro ICU who had suffered a massive brain bleed in the middle of jacking off. He was in his late 50s. His 20-something daughter had found him unconscious, dick in hand, PRN playing, and called 911. That was pretty bad. Both because it was a bad stroke, pun intended, and because of how embarrassing it was for everyone involved. Otherwise it's mostly just rectal foreign body insertions and urethral foreign body insertions. A woman came into the hospital with an infection in her colostomy stoma. Apparently she has been letting men go to Pound Town in her second brown round. In her stoma. She referred to herself as a colostotote. Another woman came into the hospital with maggots in her vagine because her and her partner thought mayonnaise would make a good lube. Apparently cleaning up after was not a big priority. Mayonnaise. Squidward. Is mayonnaise a lubricant? I forgot I was browsing by new. I was like, those comments will be fun to read. And then reality kicked in. I have to. Not a medical professional but as someone who regularly has sex with her husband. First one. I had a bruised throat from sucking dick but didn't realize it until my doctor started laughing and told me I did not have strep like I thought. The second one is another oral related one in which somehow, some way, the ball on the bottom of my tongue ring got stuck in my husband's penis while also still in my tongue. It was a great 30 seconds of him screaming at me not to move and me freaking out because my tongue was stuck. At the nursing home I work at, a resident with dementia complained of pain in her undercarriage. When the aide took her to the bathroom to examine her, a line calculator fell out of her vagina. No wonder she was in pain. The thing was a good 4 inches wide and 6 inches long. We're still trying to figure out where she got the calculator from. That all adds up. Edit. Thank you kind stranger for the gold.